Cemetery picnics on Halloween. My first Halloween in America was celebrated at a picnic in a cemetery with my host family and their kids in Washington, D.C. in 1977. We stayed there until dark, and it was far beyond creepy. It was unforgettable. Did you know that picnicking in cemeteries became a social thing in the mid to late 1800s in the United States? That might seem like a strange idea. Let's set the scene. It's a beautiful spring day. Blue skies overhead, lush green grass under your feet, and the scent of fresh flowers perfumes the air. You spread a quilt upon the ground and proceed to unpack all your overflowing picnic basket. You smile as you see your kids frolicking about with their relatives. Except your relatives are all dead, and your kids are climbing on their gravestones. You're having a picnic in a cemetery. Wait, what? A brief history of cemetery picnics 100 or so years ago, this scenario would have seemed perfectly normal. Beginning in the late 1800s, cemeteries were prime picnic spots. Remember, in the aftermath of the bloody Civil War, and in an age of cholera and yellow fever, cities created large new cemeteries to accommodate the dead. Family farms or sacred churchyards were no longer the only spots for burial grounds. These New Age cemeteries looked and functioned more like public parks than stark, spooky graveyards. They featured professional landscaping, winding paths, ponds, and pavilions. Some families simply wanted to continue their traditions of enjoying a meal with the family despite some of those attendees being deceased. A January 1885 article in the Fort Scott, Kansas Daily Tribune describes a family's Thanksgiving celebration in the cemetery. "We are going to keep Thanksgiving with our father as was live and hearty this day last year," a son tells the carriage driver in the story, "and we've brought something to eat and a spirit lamp to boil coffee." Within the iron-wrought walls of American cemeteries, beneath the shade of oak trees and tombs' stoic penumbras, you could say many people rest in peace. However, not so long ago, people of the still-breathing sort gathered in graveyards to rest and dine in peace. One of the reasons why eating in cemeteries became a fad, as some reporters called it, was that epidemics were raging across the country. Yellow fever and cholera flourished, children passed away before turning 10, women died during childbirth. Death was a constant visitor for many families, and in cemeteries, people could talk and break bread with family and friends, both living and deceased. During the 19th century, and especially in its later years, snacking in cemeteries happened across the United States. It wasn't just apple munching alongside the winding avenues of graveyards. Since many municipalities still lacked proper recreational areas, many people had full-blown picnics in their local cemeteries. The tombstone-laden fields were the closest things, then, to modern-day public parks. The end of an era maybe as more public parks became more prolific, and the death rate began to decline in the early 20th century, cemetery picnics lost their appeal. Cemetery officials were also tiring of cleaning up after visitors who left food, bottles, and other debris behind on the graves of their loved ones. National cemeteries had forbidden food and drink in 1875, and public cemeteries finally started to follow suit. Alas, the fad of cemetery picnics died much like their silent, supine hosts. There was a time when Americans picnicked in cemeteries. For a time, eating and relaxing among the dead was a national pastime. Unlike Halloween, Dia de Muertos isn't about fear. It's about love, remembrance, and joy, celebrating the lives of loved ones who have passed away. Visiting cemeteries to clean graves, sing, and share food is part of it. Dia de Muertos Aca Day of the Dead takes place on November 1st and 2nd, mostly in Mexico, though variations exist across Latin America and Latin population in the United States. Enjoying picnics in cemeteries with dead relatives might seem creepy, particularly on Halloween, but it is a good way to remember and honor our family and ancestors who have passed on. The veil between the living and dead is supposed to be the thinnest on Halloween. What do you think of cemetery picnics, particularly on Halloween?